Hello everyone. So I'm going to show you how to enable an automation to import journal data coming from an AWS S3 bucket into Oracle Fusion ERP Cloud using Oracle Integration Cloud, and how to receive the result of the import job using an event-driven approach, and how we can load the import job log file into an Amazon S3 bucket. And then we will see how we can enable an event-driven fit coming from ERP Cloud whenever a journal batch is posted. We're going to capture that event and we're going to send it to Amazon S3 SQS queue. So in this case, the first thing is to set up the scheduled integration flow that is going to extract the import journal data coming from an AWS S3 bucket, and then we will load it into Oracle ERP Cloud. So the first thing I will do is to create a connection to Oracle ERP Cloud. So how do we do that? So here I will click on Create button. I will type ERP Cloud, so Oracle ERP Cloud. We will call this ERP Demo AWS. I'm gonna create that connection. So the first thing is to get the ERP Cloud host name. So in my case, that host name URL is this one, coming from my ERP demo instance environment. And for now, and for the purpose of the demo, I will use the username, password, token security policy. But obviously, for a real project and in production, we recommend to use all authorization code credentials, and you can find the documentation on oracle.com. So in this case, I will use a technical user, an integration user that I created in Oracle Fusion ERP Cloud. And so just to show you, if we go to Tools and Security Console here in Oracle Fusion ERP Cloud, I have created a user, OICC 0005. So basically, this integration user has or needs to have these roles. So application developer, application implementation administrator role, the application implementation consultant role, the employee role, a general accountant role, because we need it for let's say GL purposes, general accounting manager, the integration specialist role. This is key and is a must here. And then, I just have account payable manager and procurement manager, but I think that this is enough for what we will do. Okay. So coming back to our integration, so I will put the username, and then I will use my password. So once I did that, having done that, we're gonna test the connection. So in a couple of seconds, we will get 100% and the connection done successfully to our Oracle ERP Cloud instance. Okay, so that's what we will do. So our connection is done. So there we go. We are connected to our ERP Cloud demo instance from Oracle Integration Cloud. So now we just have to save the connection, and then we will go to the next step, that it'll be creating the connection to our private S3 bucket. So there we go. We have saved the connection. So now I will come back to main connections section. So now that we are connected to our ERP Cloud instance, so the second thing I'll do is to create a connection to AWS S3. So just to show you, previously I've created a bucket within my AWS tenancy or instance that I spin up. It's a free trial basically, and so I basically created a bucket. It's AWS JCG Frankfurt, and the permissions for this bucket is basically that I'm blocking all public access. So the public access is blocked because we turn on this option. So that means that the S3 bucket is private. So what it means is that only, let's say, other AWS services could be able to access my S3 bucket. So which kind of AWS S3 services can access? So in my case, I also previously created an instance, a public and private instance. So the idea is that I will have a private VM deployed in a private subnet within my AWS tenancy or environment, and that private VM, in that private VM, I will host the Oracle Integration Cloud connectivity agent. So the way we can enable a multi-cloud integration architecture here to privately access that private S3 bucket is using the connectivity agent. So the connectivity agent, as you can see, you will see it after a couple of minutes. The idea of the connectivity agent is to being deployed within the same private subnet where this private resource is located. In this case, it's our S3 bucket. So we will, and I previously installed the connectivity agent within that private VM. That's something that you can do here. I mean, if you go to agents, this is my connectivity agent, so you can download the connectivity agent. And also one thing that you will need also is to download the config file. And the config file already has everything or all the credentials needed to connect from the connectivity agent to Oracle Integration Cloud. So in this case, the way the e-agent works is that it doesn't allow inbound traffic. So in the end is I will have a connectivity agent deployed here, and the connectivity agent only allows outbound traffic. So it's a private connection between the agent and OIC, and not the other way around. So the agent is basically doing the work. So the way this EC2 instance, this VM is a SUSE Linux instance, can access my S3 bucket, or private S3 bucket, is through something that AWS provides, that is virtual private cloud endpoints. In this case, if we go to the instance and we check for the subnet, right? And then we check on the root tables that it has, you see that basically this EC2 instance is going to access that S3 bucket using a private endpoint. It's called VPC gateway endpoint. So that's the way we can access privately from this EC2 instance to and have access to this private S3 bucket. So basically, the VM where I will host the Oracle Integration Cloud Connectivity Agent will have access to this S3 bucket using this VPC gateway. The VPC gateway within AWS guarantees that the traffic goes internally within Amazon and not through public internet. So that's why we need the connectivity agent to connect privately to this S3 bucket. Otherwise, that Amazon AWS S3 bucket is not going to be able to be accessed by anyone, right? So again, the connectivity is through this VPC endpoint gateway endpoint. And another thing that you will do is the permissions on the S3 bucket. So you can associate an IAM role to this instance, and basically the IAM role it has some permission policies, and one the permission policy that I added to it is that it provides full access to all buckets in this case. So basically what I'm saying here is that this EC2 instance is able to connect to my S3 bucket, private S3 bucket, as you can see, because it's a private. We are blocking all public access. So the only way to connect is through this VPC gateway endpoint. Okay? So what I will do next is to connect to my Oracle integration from Oracle Integration Cloud to this S3 bucket. Okay? So let's go back to connections. Let's create a new connection. So here the way we can and we support connectivity to AWS services is through the compatible compatibility that we have in Oracle Integration Cloud for AWS services using signature, AWS signature v4. So through our REST connector, we provide that native capability. In this case, I will set up this adapter as invoked because I will invoke the S3 REST API, private REST API in this case, using the connectivity agent. So I will call it AWS S3 connection, right? And so let's create it. There we go. So the connection type is going to be REST API based URL. So what's the connection URL for this S3 bucket? It's basically this one. So here is basically the first part is the name of my bucket, in this case AWS JCG Frankfurt, and then it's just .s3 the region where I deployed this bucket. In this case, this bucket is within the Frankfurt region. So if you see basically here, this is the AWS region where I deployed my AWS JCG Frankfurt bucket. So it's EU Central 1 in Frankfurt. So that's what you need to put here, and then that AmazonAWS.com. So the next thing is to use the security policy. In this case, we natively support the AWS signature v4 version 4 for Amazon Web Services, AWS services. So basically what I need is an access key, a secret key of a user, of an IAM user, and the AWS region and the service name. So the access key, actually that's something that you can let's say get here. So basically if you go here to an IAM user, or even with your principal user, you will see something like security credentials. So basically you can access your keys here. Okay. So that's basically what you can access here. So you need the access key and the access secret. So in my case is this one. and then I will put my access secret key. Then the AWS region, again, I put it Frankfurt region. That's the one that I will choose. And the service name is just S3, so Amazon Simple Storage Service. Now, as I explained before, this is a private bucket. Again, we are blocking all public access to this bucket. So again, the way we can access this is in the connectivity agent that I deployed in a private EC2 instance that has access to S3, my S3 bucket through a VPC virtual private cloud gateway endpoint. Okay. So I will choose connectivity agent, and I will associate my agent. In this case, is this one. This is the agent group, which has the association with my agent installed here. So basically, if I connect from PuTTY, for instance, I can see that I have an agent here in my Amazon Web Service. So, and how to install the agent, that's something that you can find in Oracle Integration Cloud documentation, public documentation. So, let's go back to our Amazon connection. So once we associate the agent group, then I just have to test the connection. And there we go. We're connected to AWS S3 bucket. So we're going to save the connection. There we go. And we are ready with this.
Okay. The next step is to create the schedule integration that will extract journal data files from S3 bucket and import them into Oracle ERP Cloud. So let's go to integration, create an integration and a schedule integration. So I will call it AWS S3 GL to ERP Cloud. So that's the name of my schedule integration. So the first thing that we need to do is to list the files from S3 bucket. So we will use the AWS S3 REST API connection that we created before. And so we will call it like list files from S3 bucket. And this is the path for the REST API. It's a get operation, and we will need to specify a query parameter that is the list type parameter, and the response from the S3 REST API that is an XML file. So that's gonna be, like the options that I want to configure for these to invoke this S3 REST API. So the name of the query parameter is list type, according to the documentation from AWS. And then the response, I will use an XML sample. Which XML sample? So according to the documentation, this is like the kind of, or the XML response payload that you receive once you call the list objects from S3 bucket. So it's basically parent XML element list bucket result with let's say header information like the name and all of that, and then you have an array of objects, or the contents is called, where the key is basically the file name. Okay, and you have also the last modified time for the file and the size of the file as well. So we will basically use that XML sample from the AWS S3 REST API documentation. So I will use that. So let me select the list objects response XML. So you see the element, this bucket result. So there we go. And that's the only thing I need to do there. There we go. So the next step is to map this list type parameter. So we will map it. In this case, it's just for telling S3 REST API which version of the API is we will call version 2 in this case, and that's the only thing we need to map there. Okay, so once we do that, the next step is, or the next action is to iterate over the file. So for that we have a for each action. Well, so we will call this for each action as for each S3GL file. In my case, and for the purpose of the demo, I will have just one GL interface, that zip file. Anyway, this could work for multiple files coming from S3 bucket. So the repeating element here is basically the content array, right? So you see, this is the one. As you see, this is the array. So that's the one that I will paste here, and I will say that the current element through the iterations is gonna be named as current S3GL file. Right? So there we go, and that's, let's say, the only thing we need to provide here. Right? So I'm gonna save my progress. Then the next thing is to, once we iterate over each content result, we will get the key of the object, and with the key of the object, we will get the GL file based on that key or file name. So we will bring again the AWS3 connection, REST API, and we will call it get FBDI GL file from S3. The path of the operation is /filename. So this is a template parameter for the REST API, and I will use the key extracted from my REST API. So I need to configure a response for this. It's going to be a binary file, right? So this is just the template parameter file name that we have, and the response will be a binary file. So it's an application output stream response body media type, right? And that's it. Okay, so once we do that, we need to map, in this case, the file name from the current GL element within the iteration. So in this case, we need the current S3G file and the key. And that's it. Here we go. Once we validate this, we will do the next step. That is basically importing the journals into Oracle ERP. So for this, we will add our ERP demo AWS connection. There we go. So I will call these import journals. Right? I will choose the import bulk data into Oracle ERP Cloud. You see, this is one of the differentiators or the added value of the adapter that wraps up all the complexity on how to import bulk data into Oracle ERP Cloud. So you just need to choose this option. Then what the adapter is gonna do is to discover all the different operations that we can do on Oracle ERP Cloud, like bulk operations. One of these operations is the import journal job. Right? So that's the action that we will perform, or the job that we will trigger in our Career to Cloud using the adapter, right? So in a couple of seconds, we should see this working. So there we go. So I will search for import journals. So we choose import journals. Okay. We leave it as it is. Then we will enable a callback, because the idea is that this the adapter will trigger the import journal job. This is an asynchronous call, because once ERP Cloud import all the data into the internal Fusion tables, it's going to generate a log file, an import job log file, that will send it to the internal UCM or file system from ERP Cloud, within ERP Cloud. And then basically this callback is that we will have, and that's the next step, we will have a callback, import journal callback integration flow that will capture that import journal job done event, and we will get the ID of the import job log document. We will retrieve that log file, it's a zip file, and we will send that zip file to a AWS S3 bucket, right? So we need to check the enable callback option. We click on next, and there we go. There we go. So what we need to map here is basically I will map the file reference, that in this case, sorry, the file name, that in this case is the key, right? So that's the file name, right? The size, and the file reference, that is basically the content of the file, which we get from the get FBDI file from S3. So here is the stream reference, or the content. So that's what we are going to map here. There we go. So we validate this. Okay. So finally, I will save it. And we are almost done. So now I just have to define what's the business identifier here for this flow. In my case, I will just use the start time as the identifier for this job, a schedule job, that we will trigger on demand just for the purpose of the demo. And that's it. We just need to activate it. So we activate it. I'm just using the debug option in case we get any error on the setup we did, and we just need to wait for the flow to be activated. So there we go. We have finished with the schedule integration that will pick up GL journal files from an AWS S3 bucket and will import it into our Career Cloud. If you see, we use a no-code approach for this, not a single line being implemented here. So the next step is to set up the import journal callback integration flow. So let's do it. So I will create a app-driven integration. In this case, this integration will be triggered once the import journal job is done. And so basically ERP Cloud is gonna trigger this Oracle integration flow once the job is done, and we will get the document, and then we will send that import job log with the result and all the log files associated with this import job, and we will put it into back to the S3 backend. Yeah. So let's call ERP Cloud GL log file to AWS S3. Right? So we will call it like that. There we go. So I will use my horizontal view. And the first step is to use my ERP Cloud connection. So I will call that a get import journal callback. Then we will use the one of the added value that Oracle Integration Cloud has, specifically with the native adapter for ERP Cloud, that is receiving callback messages upon completion of AVDI bulk import jobs, like the import journal one. So we will choose the receive callback message upon completion of the import job submitted by my schedule integration. Right? So here basically the adapter is discovering like the different import jobs we can receive a callback message from. So in this case, I will search for import journals. So I want to receive a callback message upon completion of the import journal job, right? So this is the only thing I need to do here, and that's it. We are now able, with this action, we will be able to capture those callback events once the import journal job is done. Okay. Now, the next step is to get the content of that log file. Basically, retrieve the import job log file from Oracle ERP Cloud. So now we will use the same ERP connection that we have. So now we will call this get import journal log file. Right. Now I will select query because I will get the document, the metadata and the content of the document from Oracle ERP Cloud. I will use services, and here I will search for ERP integration service. There we go. So the adapter is discovering the different actions. Here I want to get the document for a document ID. The document ID is coming from the callback event. So that's what we will do. There we go. So that's it. Okay. So now we will need to map the document ID coming from the event to the document ID as the request of this get document ID. So we just need to map this. There we go. So we have mapped the import journal log file ID to that operation. Okay, we are almost done with this. So the next step is to send the import journal log file to S3. Right. So we will use our AWS S3 REST API connection. So I will call it send import journal NVIDIA log file to S3. And in this case, when you read the documentation, the path is the file name or the key of the object we want to put into S3 bucket. And this is a put operation, right? And we will need to configure a request. In this case, I will send a binary file to as an attachment to the REST API. So here we just need to leave it like that. And in the request payload, it's going to be a binary file, right? So that's what I will do, right? Then done. There we go. And the only thing I need to map here is the template parameter. So here, I'm sorry, the file name is going to be the the document name from Oracle ERP Cloud. So that's the file name. And then the stream reference is going to be the content of the file. So this content is in base64 encoded. So we have cool capability here that is called decode base64 to reference. So that basically means that this function is gonna decode that content in base64 encoded, and it's gonna retrieve the file reference for me. Right? So once we do that, there we go. We are done with this. We're okay. So now we just need to validate the mapping. There you go. We save. And the final step is to use a business identifier for this callback event. In this case, I will use the request ID. That is basically the request ID for the import job that was triggered by my schedule integration. So that's what I will use as the business identifier for this callback event. And that's it. We just need to activate the integration. I will use debug just for purpose of the test. And we will be able to activate the integration. So there we go. We have set up the callback integration flow, which gets the document ID for the import job log file with all the data and all the logs associated with those tasks. And we get the document, and we have set up that document should be sent to my S3 bucket, right? So there we go. We are finished with both flows. Let's see any in action. So remember that I created a zip file with the GL interface CSV where I have my journal line. So remember the name of the batch is journal batch is GL journal batch JCG123, and this is my group ID. This is the counting period, March 2023, and this is the values for the lines, right? So let's so remember we updated that GL interface zip into my bucket, right? And we will see how this is generated or imported into Oracle Fusion ERP Cloud. So in this case, we will go to schedule processes, right? So here we have tools, schedule processes, and we should be able to see the import job trigger here as a new process once the integration is launched. Okay, so for the purpose of the demo, I will trigger this schedule integration on demand, but in a real project, this will be executed every period of time, every 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever you have. So what I'm gonna do is to run this integration. There we go. So we will run it. Let's run it. So we have run the integration. So in a couple of seconds, we should see the import job done. So in a couple of seconds, we should see, okay, succeeded. If we go here to Oracle ERP Cloud, so look at the process ID is 8923491. So a new load interface file was launched, and actually we can see that here in the integration. This is the number of the process launched here, right? So this is gonna load the journals into the GL interface tables, and then it will import those journals into the final table. So it seems it has already loaded those import journals into those tables. And the next thing is that the log file for the import job is being loaded into the internal UCM. So it has been succeeded. So if we come back to my instances and I refresh this, we should see the callback event working for this. There we go. For my request, it succeeded. So again, this was the callback event for the job 8923491. But it was this one, right? And if we see, this has get the callback event, get the import journal log file, and send it to my S3 connection, my S3 bucket, right? So if I refresh here, we should see the import bulk data journal import launcher 8923491. That was my initial request. So I could download the file, and if I open it, we should see something like this. And you see 2-line batches, the journal batch. So here we can see basically like the different log files. So there we go. We have just set up an integration flow which gets this GL interface loaded into ERP Cloud, and then we get the callback event with the log file associated with the journal import tasks. So the next step is to enable an event-driven flow that is gonna capture every time events coming from ERP Cloud every time a journal is posted. So that's what we're gonna do, right? So just to check that everything works pretty well and the journals were actually loaded here, we can go to General Accounting, we can go to Journals, and in Journals, we can go to Manage Journals, and if I check for the GL journal batch 1, 2, 3, There we go. Look at the time. So if I enter here, the counting period, so we should see the same values here, the counting date, and the values that we put, right? So it's unposted. So the next thing that we will